Chris, first of all, welcome to Aberdare Park. And going right back to the start, where did this sort of love affair come from with everything two wheels and racing and motorbikes? So where did the journey begin?
Well, I always wanted bikes. I remember when I was like 8 or 9, it was my uncle had the 95 Fireblade, took me on the back, and it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But then when I got a bit older, I always wanted my license, and because I was still living at home even while in the army, it was parents wouldn't let me. And yeah, I only actually wanted to get a cruiser. That's all I wanted. And eventually it got to the point where I convinced them to let me go for my license. And yeah, it kind of just flourished from there, really. So I did get the cruiser to start off with no interest in super sports or anything like that. And it was my best mate convinced me to buy his R6, and then realised what I was missing. And it kind of all just kind of even just came even more from that. And I enjoyed it, loved it. So
Yeah, amazing. And could you tell us a little bit about your story from the Army's Union Services to the start of what ideally was going to be the start of your racing career as well? Could you tell us a little bit about that journey and how that came about?
yeah, so I joined the army in 2006, and I started out as a regiment which has been amalgamated now. So I was in the Royal Gloucestershire, Berkshire, Wiltshire Regiment. But by 2007 we amalgamated into One Rifles, and yeah, I've done a couple of tours and whatnot, and I got my licence while I was serving as well. When I eventually ended up on the R6 that I got off my best friend, it was my company sergeant major that saw it, and then, bit of a long story short, he saw how I kept it, and he asked me to spanner for him on that weekend. And so I had no interest in racing or anything else. It was one of those that I wanted to see it and everything else, but never had any interest of myself. And I remember going to that race meeting, spannering for him, and seeing guys go round, and I was like, actually, I'm probably quicker than that on my R6. Well, I'll give that a go. So I ended up walking away from the first ever meeting with no interest, walked away with a Thundercat. And yeah, so I brought that back. Couple of the army riders, because I ended up obviously in the army racing team at that point as just being a mechanic. Yeah, I ended up getting asked to go over to the Manx GP to go spanner for 2 of the riders. And then I saw road racing, which again I never really thought about, but always seen bits about it, thought it was amazing. And then looked at it and went, actually, if you're going to go anywhere, this is where I want to go. So that was at that point where I set myself, actually I want to see if I can do it. It was not long afterwards I ended up having an accident on my road bike, and it wasn't quick, it was just a right place, right time. And I woke up a week later and found out all my injuries. I woke up out of an induced coma. My right arm was in a cast and up on a stand, and I remember trying to get it off the stand and it wouldn't come down, so I went right, and I went to flip my arm up, I went, oh, well, you're definitely coming down then. And it kind of just started realising what happened at that point. Yeah, it was quite a strange thing, strange wake-up call. And then as it went on, I found out I got more and more injuries, and it was literally every week I found out something new, and I was getting really down. So while I was still in hospital, I thought, you know what, I'm going to lose the army, and I always wanted to be in the army. I had no interest in anything else, so I lost my life, and I had to basically reset and start from the start. And I started feeling like a toddler again, because I had to learn how to tie my shoelaces, I had to work out how to do buttons, I had to literally go back to the start. And because I knew that was the way it was going to go, and it was very quick that I realised, I thought I had to keep riding. I had to do something that was still my love before that I could carry on. So I racked my brains trying to work out how to do it, and I came up with the idea of literally just moving the clutch, and just move the clutch behind the front brake, because I was trying to overcomplicate it, and I was even confusing it myself. And I was like, it's just a clutch, just move it. And then my friend said, have you ever spoke to a guy called Danny Campion? And he's got one arm and one leg, and he was racing an R1. And I went, right, so I've got a scratch. You're doing it on an R1. I went, I've got no excuse. And I asked him to send me the picture of his adaptions. But he's had to do it on the left side because he's missing his right arm, which is actually even harder than what I had to do. And I saw it and I went, right, well, if you can do it, there's no reason why I can't. And I went back, strip rebuilt the bike, and then just mainly to see if I could still do it. And I rode my bike, I think 6 months and 2 weeks after I got injured. And that was me, I was just loving it. And then because I had that dream there in the first place, I wanted to see if I could carry it on. The only bit that I do miss is I wanted to wear the army leathers. But because obviously I'm not serving anymore, it wouldn't feel the same if I ever got the chance.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I suppose some people are probably, when they're watching you racing, they're probably thinking about, is your bike modified in any way or adjusted? Is there any other sort of modifications apart from the clutch changing, or is it just exactly like a standard bike?
I kept it as standard as possible because obviously I was used to the standard bike anyway. So the closer I could keep it to standard means the less learning I had to do. So I just literally moved the clutch behind the front brake. And then as I've been getting faster, I've been finding other problems to do. So one foot peg is actually higher than the other. So because of the way that I've got to hold myself on the bike, I got to put the pressures in the feet in the right way.
As well, yeah.
And also bringing the bike out of the turns, I'll find one side easier than the other. So I actually prefer my left turns to my rights. But then I have known other arm amputees similar to me who struggle with their left and prefer the right.
So it's
very personal.
Exactly, yeah.
Then as I got quicker with that, I then realised my braking zones I struggle with because I'm trying to hold myself off the bike because I can't put any weight through the bars. And when you're going through a heavy brake zone, it's not too bad when you've got both arms to hold yourself back. But I found that I was putting pressure into one side of the bar, so it was actually putting me off coming into the turns. So I actually built a pad up on the tank. So I was taking the weight through the tank rather than taking it through the bars. Then I realised I was getting quicker, and it then started throwing me to the back of the bike. And to be fair, I see a lot of the guys do it anyway, putting pads behind the seat count just to hold you forwards. So basically I turned the bike into a saddle, so it just kept me in one place, which made the corners harder because I can't lean off the bike in the same way.
It's a learning process throughout as well. What does the future hold for you? What's your ambitions, and will you be returning to Aberdare Park in the future?
Oh, I'll be coming back. I mean, it'd be rude not to. But I want to see how far I can go with this. At the moment, I'm not as quick as the top boys, and I never will be. And that's not what I'm racing for. I'm racing to see how far I can go. And as long as I'm competitive, that's all I'm after. Because there is no way I can physically outbrake or out-accelerate the top boys. It's just not going to happen. But if I can be close, I'm going to aim for it. So my aspiration is to try and see how far I can go, and obviously the top level of road racing is the Isle of Man TT. But I'm also not going in with my eyes closed. I know it's going to be even to get close to it is a big feat in itself. But if I can make it, I'm going to make it.
That's what dreams are for.
Yeah.
You've got to do it. How are you adjusting to the circuit and, of course, the conditions that we've had this weekend?
Well, the conditions have been very interesting. Yeah, it's great. It's a nice little circuit, to be honest. Like, from my point of view, I've never had anything on circuit that close, like the trees and hay bales and everything else. So it's been quite an eye-opener all around. It's quite physical and demanding, especially for such a short track. But I seem to be okay, I hope. Yeah. To be honest, I have obviously heard it being called Aberdare and everything else. I do see why, but I think I need to go quicker to find out why. Yeah. No, yeah, when you're going around some of the turns, you get drawn in like too early, so your exits always end up being in the wrong place. And yeah, so you do end up getting very close, and those trees seem to come in a lot quicker than what you anticipate. And I think the funniest one was it's the first time I've gone round a bend and had a hay bale just under my stump, and I'm like, oh, hang on a minute.
Is it a case of like sort of finding a rhythm around you? Is a lot of riders have said that in the past. It's just finding that kind of smooth rhythm around you, and that just comes with experience. Really, isn't it? Yeah.
I found that there's a couple of places which, to be honest, after talking to some of the racers, a lot of the racers are doing it as well. Coming on to the start finish, I found even if when I was just going around to see what the laps are doing, the whole bike's spinning up and trying to go into the bars are just going into a bit of a slapper. So I found that you have to know where you're going to be able to stay off of those little bits, especially in the wet. I found that what I've been doing actually is talking myself through it. So it's literally just going, right, okay, so last time you did this, so stay, now, look, turn. Because I found that as soon as I started doing that, I was not getting drawn in earlier because I think I was just convincing myself it's okay.
And there's no pressure as well, is it? You know, this is going to be a learning experience for the first few times before you even think about getting sort of the more competitive side of the results, really. But it takes time to learn this place, even for how short it is. You know, it does take time, doesn't it?
I think every single time I've been round, I've taken a different line every single time.
Chris, it's been a pleasure to have you with us today, and we very much look forward to having you back in 2024.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for having me.
No worries, mate. No worries at all. No worries.